I really appreciate the opportunity to share the work we've done to improve MedRec on our floor. We're really excited because we've seen a big difference in our adverse drug event rates.
Thanks for joining us. Improving patient care is important to all of us. Our adverse drug event rate has been decreasing slightly over the last 6 months, but harming even one patient is one too many. Now, I don't know if you're all aware of what happened to Mr. Isaacs last week on our surgical unit. When he was admitted to our unit, there was a mistake in his medication orders, and unfortunately, we all missed it. He got the wrong dose of insulin. He became severely hypoglycemic and had to be taken to the step-down unit to be stabilized. A reliable medication reconciliation process may have prevented this adverse drug event.
I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope by discussing our CUSP team's project and what we did to reduce adverse drug events that we can prevent any more harm from happening to our patients. Let me begin by providing a short summary of our project.
Okay, I think we'd all appreciate that.
Okay. Our CUSP team identified a problem with patients on high-risk medications like insulin, anticoagulants, digoxin, and narcotics when we reviewed our monthly adverse drug event data. Similar to what happened to Mr. Isaacs, we had 2 insulin events related to MedRec within 3 months. The wrong dose of insulin was ordered at the time of admission or during transfer to our floor for both of these patients. They both became hypoglycemic and we had to give them D50. When we reviewed our MedRec process, we realized we didn't have a double check in place for patients on high-risk meds. We also didn't have the pharmacist's knowledge and expertise to understand some of these medications. So we pulled our team together and did some process mapping.
Process mapping. It's a tool for outlining processes to help explore factors that may negatively impact the process, right?
It is, and by doing this, it allowed us to see where we had to make some changes and standardize our process around double checks and tap into the pharmacy for help. We came up with some ideas and completed a couple of Plan-Do Study Act cycles, and what became clear is that we needed our pharmacist's help to develop a process to fix our existing issues. Tom really helped us with that.
I really appreciated having the chance to work on this with the team. We now have a process that generates an automatic consult to a pharmacist at the time of transfer when a patient's on high-risk medications or has over 10 medications ordered. As a result, we've seen great improvement.
Great improvement? I'd like to hear more about that.
Well, we haven't had an insulin-related event for the past 2 months on the medicine floor, and as a matter of fact, we haven't had any adverse drug events related to high-risk meds. At first, we were a bit worried that we didn't have enough pharmacists to verify all the medication orders, but focusing on the high-risk medications was a great idea, and we really have seen a positive impact.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Great.
Now, Jeff, what was the biggest barrier for putting this process in place?
Well, one worry was the time that it would take pharmacists to do this check. We all knew we wouldn't have resources to hire more pharmacists, but Tom helped us see that this doesn't take an excessive amount of time as long as it's flagged in the EHR and resources are prioritized for patients with the highest risks.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it sounds good, but I don't think that's going to work on our surgical unit.
Mary, why do you say that?
The staff is already overburdened without complicating the admission and transfer process by adding pharmacy consults. Do we really have that many medication errors on our floor? We only had 2 in the last 2 months, and the patients were not seriously harmed. I think it's impossible to avoid all medication errors. So as long as no one is seriously harmed, I think we're doing okay.
You know, Mary, I used to feel the same way, but once we started to focus on this and realize that these adverse drug events really can be prevented, it became clear that even 1 or 2 events are too many. And personally, if the patient were my mother, even moderate harm is not okay.
I didn't think about it that way. 1 event is too many. The change will be difficult on my unit, but it'll be worth it.
Change often is difficult, but Jeff just made a very important point. What do the rest of you think?
Well, I know there is some variability in the number of medication errors across different units, but I agree with Jeff. Even 1 adverse drug event is too many, and not only for a patient, but also for us. I once gave a dose of morphine to a patient who had been transferred to our floor, but I didn't know that he'd already gotten a dose only an hour before. That detail had been dropped from the handoff from the PACU, and I ended up having to call the rapid response team, and my patient was transferred to the ICU. I still feel terrible about that.
I'm so sorry, Kay. And you're right, adverse events take a toll on us because we never intend for them to happen. Kay, would you be willing to champion the MedRec project on the surgical floor where you work?
I'd love to, Regina, but I really don't have a lot of experience leading these types of initiatives in my unit. Would someone be able to help me? I'd just like to ensure that my unit does as well with this as the Gen Med unit on 3 South did.
Well, I heard Philip, the pharmacist who helps cover the surgical areas, talking about a webinar that he participated in through ISMP, the Institute for Safe Medication Practices. I bet Philip would be a champion for the surgical unit.
You know, that would be great. I like working with Philip, and so do the other nurses on the surgical unit. Can we set up a time to talk with him?
I'll help arrange it.
Great. This sounds like a good plan to help decrease the adverse drug events throughout the hospital.